Howdy. So let's talk about imperial area. So previously we talked about imperial length. So imperial being the units that typically the Americans use, things like feet and inches and miles. And area meaning what can be covered by squares. So a surface, if you would. So in this lesson, we'll discuss which imperial units are used to measure area and then solve some problems. So this first little activity here is optional. If you'd like to do it, go for it. Flag me down, grab some paper. If not, I'll summarize it in a second here. So I'm not going to read through all this. You can do that. However, what you're going to find out is how these squares are related. So if you had 1 foot squared, and then this is 1 foot by 1 foot. Okay? That would be what you would use to measure areas in square feet. Now remember, 1 foot is the same as 12 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think I have 12 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Beauty. Okay, so 12 inches this way, and is also 12 inches this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Beauty. So if we were to split this up into little squares, this is going to look real sloppy for me. We could actually just extend these lines across. Obviously, when you do it, yours is going to be neater. And you're not going to have these lines extending too far, and yours are going to be exactly 1 inch. Unlike mine, where I'm just guessing. And then you're going to draw them the other way, pretending these are all straight, perfect squares, as I'm sure yours would be. Do, 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 do. Now, you see that there is a bunch of squares there, all these little ones. But how many are there? Because this is 1 foot squared. I want to know how much how many square inches are in 1 square foot. So 1 square foot equals how many square inches? So if we wanted to, we could count them. That would take me forever. Okay, I'm too lazy for that. I know that 1 foot is the same thing as 12 inches in length. Now my area is length times width. So if I wanted my area in square feet, I would just go 1 times 1, and hey, that big square is 1 square foot. But I want my area in square inches. So I'm going to go area equals 12 inches times 12 inches. Whew, that's a terrible 2. 12 inches times 12 inches. 12 times 12 is 144. And my unit now is not inches, but square inches, because we were counting how many little squares there were. So if you're ever wondering why that number is on your formula sheet, now you know. And then you would proceed to do the same thing with square yards, and you would find out that 1 square yard is the same thing as 9 square feet. Okay, but that's just that activity. If you want to go for it, do it. If you have questions about it, please ask. So in summary, we use 3 different squares. We use the inch squared, which is about the size of your thumbprint, a square foot, which is, if you imagined one of our textbooks, if they were a square instead of a rectangle, that's about how much coverage a square foot would be. And a square yard is about if you cut the door in half to make a square. All right, let's do some examples using imperial area. So Dawn bought wallpaper for her bedroom. The roll of wallpaper is 18 inches wide. Dawn's floors are 8 feet high. She plans to cover the walls in vertical strips from floor to ceiling. So what's the area that can be covered with one vertical strip? So just so I know what I'm doing here, I'm going to draw a quick rectangle. Alrighty. So in the question, it says that the width is 18 inches and the length here is 8 feet. And all will be fine and dandy. I know my area is length times width. However, whenever I use a formula, I have to use the same units in it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I don't know, let's do our answer in square feet. Okay, it doesn't say whether they want the answer in square inches or square feet, but I want to do my answer in square feet. So that means I need to change this 18 inches into feet. So I'm going to do a quick little skeleton equation here. And I'm going to be changing 18 inches into feet. And I know that there are 12 inches in a foot. You can look that up on your formula sheet if you need. So since I'm changing to a bigger unit, my number has to get smaller. So I'm going to do 18 divided by 12. 18 divided by 12 is 1.5. Perfect. Alright, so now I know this is the same thing as 1.5 feet. So now I can calculate my area. Area equals length times width. So my area is going to be 8 feet times 1.5 feet. So if I punch that into my calculator, or you can do it in your head, either one, 1.5 times 8 equals 12. So I have 12 square feet per vertical strip of wallpaper. Alright, so what if we're talking about big areas? And when I say big areas, I'm talking football fields, I'm talking about land, I'm talking about the area covered by a lake, I'm talking about really big areas. So in the imperial system, 2 units can be used, the acre and the square mile. So an acre is kind of a weird unit. An acre is 22 yards wide by 220 yards long. So an acre is actually a rectangle. That is 22 yards by 220 yards. For a square mile, square mile is actually just a square that is 1 mile by 1 mile. So the acre is a weird unit because it is old. It was originally defined as the area of a field that could be plowed by a single ox in 1 day. Now, because when you're farming with an ox, you wanted to have less turns. So you would do these long, skinny paths. So if this was a field, I would have to turn around less because I'm going long. Right? As opposed to if I was doing lots of short ones, I would have to do many, many turns, which was difficult to do with an ox. So because of that, the shape of the fields, that's where the unit came from. Unfortunately, we still use it today, even though we typically measure areas with squares. Anyway, let's keep going. So another way to measure big areas is the idea of sections and townships. So in the 19th century, surveyors mapped Western Canada. The land was divided into squares that measured 6 miles on each side, as you can see here, 6 miles. These large squares were called townships. So each square mile was called a section. So there were 36 sections in one township. So that's what these are. These are all the square miles. So those are the sections. Each section was divided into quarters, or quarter sections, which are these. So each one of these would have 4. Now these quarter sections were parceled out as homesteads. Each of these quarters, so each one of these smaller ones, was 160 acres in size. Now, if you were to take that acre, which we said was a rectangle, and if you were to draw it as a square, it would be approximately 70 yards on each side. All right, so it could be this long rectangle, which was 22 by 220, or that's about the same as a square that is 70 yards by 70 yards. All right, let's actually do some math using these units. So an American football field is 360 feet by 160 feet. Is this area smaller or roughly the same as or larger than 1 acre? Let's find out. So first, I think we should do some converting. So let's, yeah, the acre was defined in yards. So let's change this football field into yards first. All right, so we're going to have to do a few skeleton equations here. So first I'm going to change this 360 and this 160 into yards. So set up my skeleton equation. I got 360 feet. Now I want to change it into yards. And I know there are 3 feet in a yard, and since I'm changing to a bigger unit, I divide. All right, and I'm going to do 160 feet. Again, I'm going to divide by 3. And that'll give me my other dimension in yards. So let's jump to my calculator and do those two real quick. So 360 divided by 3 was 120. And 160 divided by 3 equals 53.3. Not 5, 3. 53.3. There we go. So now I want to figure out my area of the football field. Now area is length times width. So my area is going to be 120 yards times 53.3 yards. So now my area is going to be that number times 120. My area is going to be 6,400 yards squared. So I shouldn't say yards squared, I should say square yards. Square yards. All right, so that's the football field. What about the acre? Let's go back to our previous slides here. So an acre is, I could do some math, but it says right here, is 4,840 yards squared. So 1 acre equals 4,000, oh, I forgot it already, 840. 4,840 square yards. So, is a football field bigger, the same, smaller? By the looks of it, the football field's bigger than 1 acre. All right. So, the football field is bigger than 1 acre. It is bigger. Ta-da! All right. I think I got 2 more examples here. Let's jump back and forth between SI and Imperial. So this is kind of to show you where these formulas come from. That's where this example is. So convert 1 inch squared into square centimeters. So 1 inch square is if you have a square that is 1 inch by 1 inch. By 1 inch. Now, I'm going to pretend that I don't have a formula that uses inches squared and square centimeters. I just want to show you where that formula comes from. So I know by definition 1 inch is the same as 2.54 centimeters. And that means this one is 2.54 centimeters. So if I want this area in square centimeters, I'm just going to do my area equals length times width, but I'm going to use the centimeter number instead of the inch number. So that'll be 2.54 times 2.54. So when I jump to my calculator for that one, 2.54 times 2.54 equals 6.4516. 4516. That's in centimeters squared. So if you look on your formula sheet, that should be what 1 inch equals. 1 inch squared equals. So that gives you an idea of where these formulas are coming from. They're calculated. All right, one more example. The area of Jasper's living room is 180 feet squared, and I want to change that into square meters. Now for this one, luckily we do have a nice formula on our formula sheet. So this is just a straight up skeleton equation. So if you look on your formula sheet, you're looking for something that uses feet squared and square meters. If I look on there, I'll find that 1 meter squared is equal to 10.7639 feet. Squared, that is. Feet squared. Or square feet. Same thing. Alright, so now, knowing that, I can jump to my skeleton equation. Well, that's bigger and sloppier than usual. So the first number comes from my question, 180 feet squared. And now I'm trying to change that into meters squared. And for my formula, that's the second number, 10.7639. Now, I need to think what's bigger, a meter squared or a foot squared. So a meter squared is about the size of half a door, and a foot squared is about the size of a textbook. So the meter squared is bigger. So when I'm changing to a bigger unit, gotta divide, gotta make that number smaller. So I'm gonna do 180 divided by 10.7639. There's my answer, 16.72. 16.72 meters squared. Alrighty, so now I want you to try these practice examples. If you have questions, ask me. Make sure you check your answers and keep working hard.